Yeah, Matt, I won't be tweeting anything about white supremacy or tragic to you anytime soon.
Exactly. I appreciate that.
Just so you know.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Virgin's Alternative F1 Podcast. I am Andre Dixon, as per usual, hiding out in my closet away from my children. I'm joined by my buddies, my pals, my amigos, Sam Wilson and Matthew Connell. How are you guys?
Good day. I'm back. I'm sorry I missed an episode. Awesome episode, Chris Medlard. And I felt that because we have another guest with us today, I was like, okay, I need to step up and not miss out on this.
He's training up for this one.
That's it. You know it.
Well, we're joined. We've got a very special guest, Nate Saunders from ESPN. How are you, sir?
Hey mate, I'm good. That was one hell of an intro. Very special. I've never had that before, but I appreciate it.
You're underappreciated.
It's great to be on. I mean, I'll forgive you guys for having me on after Medland. You know, I can kind of forgive that. Because I'm sure he'll enjoy the fact he came on first. But no, it's great to be on.
But how have you been coping with the lockdown? Obviously, pre-season, and then now we're in a weird season with no fans and so forth. So how are you coping with that? Yeah,
it's all right. It's kind of strange because for me, this weekend is Silverstone, and my colleague Lawrence Edmondson's going. There's basically one journalist per publication at these events. So for me, it's kind of covering it from back in the office, which is what I used to do back in the day. Kind of at the start of my career with ESPN. But it's kind of strange because we all thought when we went into lockdown, we assumed, okay, F1 news now is just done. There's going to be nothing for 3 months, and it was actually as busy as I can remember most seasons being. We had all the driver market news. Obviously, the rules kept chopping and changing and everything like that. So it's been pretty intense. So last weekend I did one of these get out of London trips. I just went down to Somerset for the weekend, which was really nice. But not the travel that I'm used to with Formula One. But actually was pretty nice. So yeah, lockdown's going well. And it is weird, isn't it? Like the whole world is just completely running on a completely different vein to what we're used to. It's still kind of hard to get used to.
Yeah, you get to a point where you are literally, when you need to go to the shops, or we've got to go back into the office for a couple of things, and like you literally are nervous, like people.
What do I do? It's seeing friends now and like go. You do the shake. Do I shake hands? Do I touch elbows? Do you just do a weird dance and you end up doing the weird kind of dance with them?
Well, before we get into your career and talking all things F1, let's have a message from our lovely sponsors.
Big up. You know what? I was almost like caught off guard there. I was kind of looking at the doc thinking, we've got some cool questions here for Chris. And then you're thrown to me on the brand messaging. I was like, oh yeah, this is how we do it. I've missed one episode and it's all gone mad. But yeah.
Get that rust off.
Exactly. We've got to rust off. It's time to polish ourselves up. Thanks to the Natural Barber Company, our good friends Joe that made an amazing product that sorts out myself and Sam's hair. Flash them up, Sam. Let's get those little beauties on camera. There we go. That is what it's all about. That is, I've got to say, I probably rushed my hair a little this morning. It's the morning's never my friend. But if you visit Natural Barber, you can get this awesome hair product. It's free of synthetics, free of petrochemicals, any harmful chemicals. You're going to look after your scalp. You're going to feel good. You're going to look good. And as I say every week, and this is a fact, Gareth Bale, that's it. The Welshman who's at Madrid, chilling, having a good time. He's got beautiful hair, and he calls it his go-to hair product. That is right. I put this lovely little product in front of his team. They put it into his gym. Gareth had a little look at it and said, you know what? I like that. And there we go. So certified by the man himself. So shop now and get 20% off. Free next day delivery in the UK when you use the code ALTSPORT25. So that's it. ALTSPORT25. Get on that code. Get some ream hair. Do people in Essex still say ream? Get some ream hair. This is the stuff. Visit naturalbarber.co. And yeah, that's it, kids. Make a TikTok video. Do whatever you cool cats do. Great.
We had a really nice podcast at some point.
I felt like
I've never been more gutted to be bald. That was one hell of a sales pitch. I want to
go
and buy a load of it.
I felt like I've been underselling it the last couple of episodes, and I felt like
that was amazing.
What we needed to do in this, you know what it is, a podcast. You get so many, podcasts who are lucky enough like us to have brand messaging. you got to spice it up. And, you know, I listen to a lot of like wrestling podcasts, for example, and the New Day, Chris Jericho got some great podcasts. They do amazing reads. And I was like, you know what? I've got to take a leaf out of that. I've got to promo this up. I've got to celebrate the decade in words and slang as much as I can, because why not? So that's why Reem got into there. So Dre, sorry about that.
I am shocked and stunned by that. But that is brought some things back to me there. There's definitely lots of pictures in my head.
You're most welcome.
Wishing I had some hair now to just...
Yeah, same, man. I mean, the 4-screen thing that you guys do, like, that's going to look weird. It's going to look like a before and after shot. You've got two bald guys, two guys with full head of hair.
Exactly. It's so true.
if you don't use this product, this is what you'll end up looking like.
This is what you got. This is what you got to look forward to.
This is it right here.
So let's go into the review of the F1 season at the moment. You know, things have it's been obviously a different one for all sports. But what things do you think have gone really well so far? What have you been impressed with, and not things that you haven't been impressed with so far?
I think the first thing that's really stood out is actually the testing around the event. You know, we're seeing, if you know, in Major League Baseball and NFL, there's players opting out, etc. Baseball's in a real mess in with some teams, but they've had 15,000 tests over the first 3 races in F1, and 2 positives came back, which is pretty impressive. So that from the very beginning has been pretty impressive. From the racing point of view, I mean, Mercedes, I always think every year, like, okay, they've hit their kind of peak of how impressive they're going to get. We're not going to see any more. And then they just keep stepping up. And I'm never sure how much it is that the other guys just don't kind of make those same gains as them. But this year, they just look unbelievable. This could be the best car like that they've produced so far, which is crazy.
Well, it's the best looking one. That's for damn sure.
Oh, yeah, that livery. I don't know if you got what you guys all think, but I think that's easily the best looking car they've made since they've been in F1.
Yeah, definitely. Because I feel like with the car liveries, I felt like there's almost too much of the kind of the white kind of feel. You feel like that's kind of been a thing. So the silver blends into that. I feel for a fan that might not be so familiar with F1, you know, you're going to have obviously your Ferraris and McLaren stick out, and then you're going to think that the same other team is huge. So I like that. I like a change up.
And silver's not the most exciting color, is it? So when it's at the front as well, you want a kind of mean looking car at the front.
I get some like Lotus vibes from it. A full black livery, really. And I also think, like, I love the green in Mercedes, or like the turquoise, whatever color you want. I'm not a color expert, but like the pop of the green against the black looks so much better than it does on silver, and it almost looks more neon, and it just looks sick. But it does give like those Lotus vibes and the old Senna days and the old John Player special. That was a good looking livery.
So what do you feel like the experience with the fans not being there? Do you think it's actually changed anything? I mean, some of the drivers, like I'm thinking of a few of them have actually said the same thing. But like, you know, a lot of the drivers actually said it doesn't. Max Verstappen, for example, said that it doesn't make a difference to him. Do you feel like it's made a difference to the actual overall sport, or not really nothing at the moment?
Well, it's interesting because some of them have said that, but then Kevin Magnussen I spoke to, and he said the opposite. You know, he's one of the guys who's very much like, visor goes down, I'm a racer, you know, nothing phases me, etc., etc. But he said in the first 2 races, you know, he was kind of driving around, and even in the race, just kind of felt like this is a bit strange because, you know, there's no one in the stands watching the races. So I think for the drivers, they must notice it. And the weird thing for me is the pre-race, the grid bit, when they're all lining up doing the normal thing, and there's just kind of this eerie silence that you can even kind of notice in the TV coverage. And usually that's really, you know, one of the great things about my job is getting to go onto the grid, which is completely unnecessary. There's no reason for me to be on the grid really, but you get to soak up that pre-race atmosphere. And that bit of it is the thing I've kind of seen when I've been watching these first 3 races and just thinking that's when it's really hit home. We'll see it in Silverstone. You know, that's usually so good for British fans, and Austria is so great for Max Verstappen fans. And you kind of miss that, don't you? From a viewing perspective, it just takes something away. And I mean, I was watching the playoffs last night, and, you know, Brentford getting through to the playoff final and just in an empty stadium. And you just think it's just, I think this pandemic has made us realize just how important the fan experience is. Even when you're watching it on TV, it just adds such a different level to it. So it is strange. I think it's not as bad as football. I don't know if you guys think the same thing.
Yeah,
Agreed.
definitely.
I think that's the sad thing. It's like it's interesting because you guys kind of touched out on your last podcast episode, like guys like Albon, if they were to get their first podium and not have that crowd, it's a tough thing. And you think about, you know, without turning this into the alternative football show, but you look at a team like Leeds that finally got back into Premier League, and the Yorkshire as a music scene as a football scene, Leeds, they're nuts. And so to miss that fan moment, and even Brentford with their last game in their stadium, in Old Stadium, it's a sad thing to see. But I think, like you said, it's always better with fans. But I feel like as a TV experience, we probably haven't really missed it too much.
Yeah, and I think. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Sam.
I was going to say, I think it's going to be like, as you said about Silverstone. I think Silverstone and Monza, especially with the Tifosi, like they completely swarm the track in Monza. I think that's going to be the most noticeable difference. I think if we'd have had the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, then that would have been weird without an orange army. But like Silverstone and Monza, I think really eerie kind of races, especially this weekend, because it's the one everyone here, like I know us four all want to go, but we're just going to be sat at home and it's going to be quite a strange experience.
Yeah. I think the only race that will feel normal will be Sochi without any fans, because that usually is pretty soulless.
Yeah. That's Russia. It's Russia, darling.
I'm not going to say anything just in case in the future we have to go there and get. I think the customs is no joke from what I hear, so I'll be very nice with what I say about them.
I can vouch for that. I've been there 4 times to the race, and each time customs, I was like, well, I think this is the end of the line for me. I don't know why. But you just end up thinking there's something, you're like, I've done something here. Shit, like what have I done?
They'll be sitting in this room for ages.
I'm off to the gulag. Bye, guys.
So, I mean, what this has enabled F1 to do, I feel, is actually, this is a really, out of a terrible situation with the pandemic, for them to be able to try something new, to be able to get new fans in. So I really love, and you can see where this is going here. I really love the fact that, obviously Heineken, shout out to Heineken 00, respect to you guys. We love them. They're friends of ours.
Friends of the show.
Big friends of the show. So they introduced the fan cams on one of the corners. I can't remember which one. And we had someone who looked really familiar on one of the screens drinking milk for Lando. I don't know if you caught that one.
I'm just gonna say I'm very, very grateful that Nate on his Twitter didn't pin me and luckily put tragic next to Rosberg. I'm so grateful.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say
well.
I didn't actually put 2 and 2 together that was Matt. I remember that one, and I was like, that was okay. But Rosberg just going like this, I just thought I was
weird over butt shot. Look, I'm gonna say I lucky for myself, I have very thick skin, and I wouldn't be too offended, Nate, if you ribbed me on that one. But it's really funny because, to be honest, to give the backstory, because it's quite a funny story, and I feel like that is a hilarious overachievement on our part. It's never been ever my desire to really do on-camera things as a kind of video producer director, because in this COVID state, we had to find different ways to be creative. So here we are, my sad face talking nonsense. Our friends at Heineken, who know Dre very well, reached out, said, hey, do you want to, I guess the submissions weren't of the PC kind, wanted some extra help. So we all sent in our own versions. Sam did like a wedding dinner speech for Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. Loved the sign. Sam made a really lovely Lewis Hamilton cardboard sign, which looked really good. But probably, turned it into his own little podcast, and I don't know how that would have been used on a corner of a screen. But I woke up early, and I tried. I got to be honest, and this is probably an exclusive to Dre. It almost has that stink of, you know what? It's one of those things that you do it and not give a good effort, and it's just gonna become something by accident. So I thought, right, I'm going to wake up 9 a.m. I was like, I'm really tired. I was like, fuck it. Do the milk. Did it in my kitchen against that back wall there. Just sent it to Dre. I tried to put it off doing it. So I gave it a day of waiting. Lo and behold, obviously, I was kind of relieved that Lando wasn't having the best of races. Then they started highlighting, within those last 10 laps, the Battle of Ocon. And I was thinking, please no. Because we saw everything else. And the fan cams, you're rightly so. The other ones, I literally couldn't stand it. And so inside of me, I was thinking, you know what? I think I've dodged a bullet here, because everyone's kind of really ruthless on the old Twitter, and I love Twitter, but obviously it's a weird opinionated space. my girlfriend, she is great because she no-sells everything I feel great I do. I could be with like Anthony Joshua. She don't care. She's just like, whatever. That's just nothing to me. But then we're watching the screen. Holy smokes. I pop up. I was like, oh no, here I am. Friends are diving in. James Allen, the great James Allen, the former commentator, was the first person to text me. He was straight on it. Was like, was that you? I was like, yeah. And then you see Twitter, and I'm so grateful that like that stuff doesn't bother me. I love if in pro wrestling terms, I would be the heel. I would lap up the bad guy stuff. And I saw one guy in like some Latin American dude link it to white supremacy, and I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to read the comments anymore. But
I knew it.
That's when you
I
turn
knew it
comments off.
all along. I knew it.
I knew it, Dre. This is what I've done, mate. I've done this podcast to draw you in and reveal my bad self. After all the,
That's a proper heel turn there, Matt.
That is exactly, mate. Exactly. That would be the ultimate turn. And of course, just for the record, I'm not a white supremacist. We haven't done podcast episodes of anti-racism for nothing. Just for a glass of milk, guys. The good old days. You know what they used milk for? They used milk cartons to find missing children, not to be racist. Come on.
I never thought that we would when we started this thing at the start of the pandemic, literally that of all the things I think that we would have to speak about, never Matt being linked to being a white supremacist. So, I have never thought we'd have to do that, but here we are.
Unbelievable.
Here we are.
It was the weirdest thing. I actually looked at that comment and was like, how did you go from here to here like real fast? Like you've just gone from 0 to 100.
That wasn't the only one. That actually wasn't the only one. There was a few of them, but but overall, like Nate, do you reckon that like things like that are going to draw people in, or honestly, just be honest, like we know we love
they suck. Don't worry, they totally suck.
Do you feel that it's a bit naff? What do you think?
So I just think those sort of things. I think what Matt said was right. Like if people do them right, if people do, it's hard to say. I thought they just looked really tacky during the race, but I think that shows you again the importance of the fan experience, And the reason I tweeted the Rosberg one specifically was because I was just like, for him as well, and Rosberg's kind of taken on this kind of semi-tragic kind of internet persona in recent years, and like for him to be doing that while the guy that replaced, because they did it while Bottas was coming around the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was just like, and full respect for him retiring and all that stuff. Like, it's understand why he did that, but I was just like, that's so weird. Like, imagine if that was like Prost or something, like a former world champion, or Hakkinen. You'd be like, what are you doing?
Imagine being the guy at Heineken that chose that video for that moment. Though you either knew or you had no clue, and it's just turned into, like Matt said, it's just turned into something massive. And you're like,
I'd like to think that they were like, we've got to put this one in because it's hilarious. So I don't mind fans doing it so much. I think actually it's a nice way to try and get fans kind of and to get that color in. But when you got former drivers and former champions doing it, it kind of suggests as well there's not enough fans who submitted stuff, in my opinion. So that was my main gripe with it. But Matt, I won't be tweeting anything about white supremacy or tragic to you anytime soon.
Exactly. I appreciate that. One thing,
just so you know.
And I like that. One thing before we move on to Sam's question, I think what's really exciting if we talk about this, last thing about the season so far, Lando Norris as a rising star. I think what was really interesting was. So again, like because my thing was about Lando, there was Lando fans that weren't quite hooked on the milk thing yet and couldn't understand the context. But I think that's quite an interesting thing that Lando is the rising star at the moment. He's gaining some momentum. It'll be interesting to see how these pan out. But as his as his sophomore season, second year, he's looking good.
Yeah,
new fans on the way.
Loving Lando at the moment. I think I don't know how many of the episodes you listened to of our podcast, but I kind of dubbed him last lap Lando after those first two races.
Exactly.
But yeah, he's been great. And that was going to be my final bit to Dre's first question. He's actually been my kind of favorite thing of the new year so far, kind of because everyone was talking about Sainz last year, and Lando's kind of the guy who stepped up ahead of him this season. And it does show you in Formula One that being like the flavor of the month is really important. You can be, you're the star 1 minute. You have a couple of bad races, or even races where your teammate beats you, and suddenly you're not so hot anymore. So, he's doing good.
I read your piece on on how Twitch has kind of brought Lando out of his shell. And it's such a relatable story when you think about it. Like, he started 2019, like he was good in 2019. He was consistent for a rookie in a car that last year wasn't as quick as it is this year. But to go out and, I mean, he obviously gained some confidence during like lockdown and doing the Twitch stream and all that kind of stuff. And then to basically come in and do a last lap like that was absolute nuts. So yeah, I agree. Like, Lando's been an absolute flyer this season. But talking about the start of the season, obviously it started in Austria with a lot of fanfare, but there was also a new initiative from Formula One with the We Racers One. There was a lot of stuff with Mercedes, obviously changing their livery, changing their racing overalls, the end racism t-shirts that we see every race. There was obviously one of the most important parts was taking a knee and allowing and giving drivers a moment to do that. How do you, like, what do you think of the We Racers One initiative? Do you think, because there's other sports that have tried to do things like this in the past and they've not necessarily continued, and what we've seen during the movement at the moment is people are praying that it doesn't just drop off and it's not a moment in time. Do you think the We Racers One initiative is going to do what it sets out to do, or do you feel like it's just going to be something that is celebrated for 2020 and is probably going to be forgotten about in 2021?
I think it's fair to be worried that it might be something that fizzles out, because we haven't really seen any leadership from Formula One or the FIA kind of in those protests. And that's something Lewis Hamilton said after the Hungarian Grand Prix, was kind of like, you know, the drivers, the GPDA is the one leading those protests, and F1 and the FIA are kind of just leaving them to it. And I'm sure you guys agree, the protests themselves in Hungary especially was just awful to watch, like the way it was organized, the way it was broadcast. And for something that important, you know, my opinion of this is almost that if you do something like that and you do it badly, it almost looks as bad as not doing anything, because it's like, you know, you're saying that we didn't even put the effort into this, you know, we just kind of thought it was like a secondhand thing, and it looks really bad. Rather than having nothing there to talk about, you have something that's really bad. So they've really got to sort that out. As for the initiative, I think what they're doing behind the scenes hopefully is legitimate, and I know they're working with Lewis and his commission and stuff like that. And I think Mercedes have been really impressive in that front, you know, coming out like they did and naming, kind of saying how imbalanced their workforce was. I was actually pretty impressed with that, because not a lot of companies do that. Not a lot of companies, you know, they'll say, you know, there's no one's business what the makeup of our employment looks like. So they've been really impressive, and I think that if Formula One can follow their lead, I think we'll be in a good position. But what do you guys think? I mean, you know, kind of across the board, I think the protests haven't been as good as people have hoped.
I think the first protest in Austria was really good. The one thing I didn't like, I didn't like all of the pre-race interviews asking Lewis if he was going to take a knee. I thought that was an unfair amount of pressure that they were putting on him. Because Martin Brundle asked the question quite softly and said, "Are you going to do that?" And then I think everyone else was very much tweeting kind of like, Lewis is going to take a knee. Is he going to take a knee? Are the drivers going to take a knee? And I think for someone like Lewis, who's obviously quite alone in the sport as a black man in F1, to then pile loads of pressure on whether he's going to take the knee was a bit much. And I feel like from a broadcasting perspective, that was a bit harsh. But I think the actual initiative started well. But I do think with Hungary, especially, as you said, I can almost see the drop-off happening. And I don't want to go into Silverstone this weekend and there be no coverage of the kneel, because Hungary, there was only half a kneel. Do you know what I mean? Because the cameras panned round when like Lewis was already down and like no one else was. So I think, I can't remember who it was running to the grid to get down, or to the paddock place to get a
Magnussen wasn't quite there, was he? He didn't have his shirts on or anything. So it was just like, and then the anthem started and it was like, guys, that was awful. Like, for such a technical sport to get something so simple wrong, pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, my just quickly before we move on, like my take on it is really, to be honest with you, like obviously no one's forcing people to be able to, especially the other drivers, to be able to do it. I just think, like, to be honest with you, it just creates a division. And at the end of the day, if someone like, you know, there are some people who are carefully explain why they can't and do other things, like Leclerc, who would say, I'm not going to do that, but what I would do is other things to be able to create awareness. And I think to be honest with you, I've been quite impressed with him. But then there's other people like Verstappen, who's just basically had no real explanation why he's not doing it. And then his team is doing it over his shoulder. So it just looks poor. So as far as I'm concerned, is that I personally, if I was speaking to Lewis, hopefully one day we will be, and I would just basically just say, look, you do your thing and you create awareness because you are bigger than everyone combined, but don't force the other guys, or don't feel that the other guys have to do it, because it just looks messy, it looks silly, and the fact that you're whooping ass every single week and winning every week, and you're the champion, and you're most likely to be the all-time greatest champion, then that speaks volumes more than anything else. Actions rather than words, because all this stuff is just gestures. It just doesn't reign true. If you don't get the backing of everyone, and people like Verstappen don't really say much at all, and just say, "Oh, I'm not doing it because I just," you got a choice if you want to do it or not. Okay, right. It just makes it seem like you're not on board.
And I think that's the key thing as well. If you, as last kind of touch on this, just got to look at football, and you got all age, or I say wide range age ranges, teenagers to people in their mid-30s, people from all over the world, different continents. They're in unison. It makes no sense why Formula One don't do it. Global audience, look, it's crazy. It's good we have the discussion about it. It's tough. It's tough to take that we have to discuss how badly they're doing it, and you can only hope that brighter things happen. But this is the way. This is the world we're in. It's a crazy time. And, it's a lot of things that happen. Of course, it's a COVID-19 era. This podcast was born out of COVID-19. That sounds really weird. We weren't grown in a lab or anything like that by sneaky scientists. What a segue.
Yeah. That sounds like the beginning of a conspiracy theory.
Exactly.
Don't tell them all of our
this
secrets.
But we're not going to, I love a conspiracy. I like to try and keep on the sane line, but it's, we were grown organically out of this madness. It's quite funny. We had the plan of doing this show. Me and Dre met at Silverstone, and working in sport. We thought, well, of course, Formula One is an area that I don't feel is oversaturated with social content like football is, for example. And so we would take this opportunity to make our own little podcast show along with Sam. Episode 1 was done together out of the Shard, building up to the Australian Grand Prix, and then it was lockdown. So Zoom became the new normal. And while we're still talking about present day, we're going to come on to the building blocks of a career to ESPN, Nate. But let's talk about your ESPN F1 podcast, because that was part of basically my research when we started doing this, was taking in the podcasts I enjoyed listening to, yours being one of them. So tell me a little bit about your podcast. Talk to me about your team. You got quite a nice little bit of chemistry going on there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's been really fun this year. And I think similar to what you said there about this one was we set that up and we thought, okay, we'll have 4 episodes before the season starts to kind of get our format right, to get the chemistry right, and then I think we had 27 episodes before the first race or something. It was something like that. So it was kind of pretty unplanned, but yeah, the format is it's myself and Lawrence, who I mentioned earlier, is at Silverstone, but we've also got Alexis Nunes in, who is fantastic. She does all sorts of things across ESPN, cricket, football, and when she arrived in London last year, which is where we're based as well, she was really kind of interested in Formula One, and would keep coming over to my desk and saying, like, why do they do this? And fascinated by Lewis as well. She's from the Caribbean herself, so they, very similar origins to Lewis. And we were already pushing for this podcast, and we thought, well, the best way to keep it, I suppose, accessible to a casual fan is to have somebody there who is kind of asking those questions, is kind of coming in
100%.
and saying, like, and almost so. And the Racing Point Renault protest has been a perfect example of that. Is you can listen to some podcasts, and I'm not trying to kind of shit all over other people's podcasts, but you can listen to some and they're very dry. They're talking about brake ducts and all of these things, and you can listen to it and you're like, man, I'm lost here. And we still do that. We have the segment, I call it Lawrence Gets Nerdy, where he will kind of, and he's, real petrol head and is incredible at analyzing this long run data and stuff on Fridays, etc. But we have that nice mix. And I think that we've found a good kind of chemistry, as you said, with it, where I think we've got Alexis on one end of the spectrum, who is kind of learning F1. I like to think I'm in the middle of it, and I'm not a massive techie myself. I know enough, obviously, to get by in my job. But then you've got Lawrence as well, who is just so in tune with that side of things. So I think we've found a nice kind of mix of things there. And if it's ever too nerdy, then the next episode might be kind of too too chill, too. So maybe we're still finding that mix of it out. But I appreciate you saying you enjoy it, and it's going well so far, I think.
I think that's so important. Like that was exactly my approach to how we do this thing. Because as much as I say, love football, I just thought there's nothing I can add to this conversation. As much as I have a wealth of experience, but I feel like with podcasts, with shows, of content, it's all part of discovery as well. And we are massive Formula One fans. I'm so grateful I had a father that as a kid with his can of Fosters, and I'm sitting on his lap watching Michael Schumacher clean up. We were lucky we have Sam, who is our resident nerd in that department, hence the glasses. Oh, man.
Well, Lawrence is the one who wears glasses out of us as well. So
see, I'm just saying it's not a
stereotype
conspiracy.
is true.
Exactly.
My real nerdy glasses on. Wait there. These are Harry Potter.
See, he's got two pairs.
So he's got two pairs.
Ready to go.
That look as well, when you've got glasses on and glasses resting on your forehead. That's like
but this is
one
the
of the
thing,
coolest
right?
things I've seen.
Exactly. So this is the thing, for my, our podcast, we didn't want to, we didn't want to be too caught up in being too technical. We wanted to, the thing I love most out of Formula One is when Ted Kravitz does his notebook and goes off piste. That is where I like us to be those little nuggets in between, something a little silly, a little fun. But, it's also been a learning experience because I have to admit, with my career being very much pre this podcast, I would say I spent the last season and a half working within Formula One. So, when you're immersed in that industry, you do sponge and learn a lot more things that you maybe didn't realize you wouldn't get from television. So what I would find on kind of car journeys with James Allen, when we would be making motorsport content across Europe, I would have to lean on talking about music and football because I was like, I'm not quite there with the techie stuff. It's difficult, but we're learning stuff here. Was there anything for yourself on a podcast that since Australia Grand Prix, is there anything you've learned differently about how you approach making content, about making podcasts, or is it very much the same as, as it is?
No, it's been a learning process the whole way through. And we've kind of, each week we kind of almost do we kind of step back from it and say, well, what did we do well here? What didn't we do? And I'm the same as you, Matt. I think I listen to a lot of those wrestling podcasts as well. I love the Jericho one. I'm a big wrestling fan from back in the day, but also, I listen to, there's a Scrubs Rewatch podcast. I don't know if anyone has been listening to that, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
but they've been doing, it's fantastic. And there's been a few things that they've done and I'm like, we can do that. So in the last episode we had, it's a tiny thing, Lawrence leaving a voice note about his experience with the thing up his nose for the COVID test. But in terms of, getting drivers on and stuff, I think we had Lando on, and you realize that when you have 10 minutes with a driver over Zoom, it can't just follow the same interview process of the past. You've got to kind of make it, you've got to remember that people are listening to it and they're not reading it. And I think for me, with an editorial background, that's been the biggest thing to kind of to learn and to remember, is that this is an interview they're listening to right now. It's not something you're going to take these words and write the piece around. It's going to be different. So yeah, it's a learning process, but it's like you say, it's great fun. And I think the great thing about podcasting especially is that basically anything you do is kind of exciting. And, if it doesn't work the next week, you just say, all right, well, we'll just pretend that never happened and just not do it again.
Sorry, go on.
Especially in COVID, where anything you do other than sit in four white walls is exciting because that's all you're allowed to do.
Yeah. Wait, it's going to be weird podcasting in person again. I think I'm going to be like, do I look at you as I talk or should I look away? Like, we
were literally saying this off air. We're like, Sam was like, when are we gonna do episodes? I was like, maybe when we get guests, like when we get some high level A-lister. It's just too normal.
Any reason? There has to be a real strong reason for us to be able to leave our homes at the moment.
What Matt's really trying to say is that I don't want to see any of you people. So
I'm loving it. I've changed.
This is where the introverts of the world have just been like, this is the best time ever because I don't need excuses to not leave the house.
I'm just saying, like, I'm on Call of Duty Warzone and Modern Warfare, killing it. I'm cleaning up. So those reps, like you said, pre-show, exercise, Call of Duty. That for me is what's working. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Let's take it back to the start, like, of your career. Tell us, about your, how you fell in love with Formula One, and how you eventually started to work for ESPN regarding, covering Espn F1.
Yeah, so my story is similar to what Matt mentioned of kind of watching the racing on the sofa when I was a kid. My dad, so I'm from a part Italian background, so I had to support Ferrari when I was growing up. That was the way. But also, I remember being very young and liking Hill, because he was the British guy. And my nonna's side of the family would say, you can't support him. You know, and at the time it wasn't even support Schumacher. It was just, you know, the Ferraris who were just pathetically lower down the order. And then it became, when Schumacher went to Ferrari, it was kind of, you know, he was kind of my hero growing up from a racing perspective. And where I really fell in love with it was Imola 2003. Me and my dad went, and just unbelievable, you know, hearing the cars up close and getting on the track afterwards. And then we went to Monza in 2004, Monza in 2006. And 2006, I very nearly caught Schumacher's hat when he threw it off the podium. We were underneath, and I jumped up. My dad kind of did a rugby lift on me, and I was 16 at the time. And I was pretty impressed with that. He like lifted me up, and I maintained to this day, like I could feel the hat go over my hand, and I was gutted for about a second. I didn't get it, and so I turned around, and there was this pile of Italians and stuff just like fighting, punching each other to get it. So I thought, so I thought,
I want any parts
probably best I didn't get it. But it was moments like that, and kind of, again, you know, the human side of Formula One, which I always found really fascinating, and those characters you get in it. So it was always something that I loved, and sports journalism is something that kind of happened for me at uni. I studied history at Reading University, mainly because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And then being sports editor of the newspaper there in my third year led to me doing the NCTJ News Associates in Wimbledon, which for anyone who's looking to do journalism, who's listening, is a fantastic course. And I know a lot of people in the industry have done it. So I was freelancing for a bit, kind of doing rugby, which I used to play until I realized I wasn't good enough to play beyond 18. It's that annoying reality. It's that annoying moment where ambition overtakes talent, and you realize that you can't live on that anymore. So I kind of did a bit of everything really for a little bit, and then 2013 I actually joined ESPN as their rugby freelancer, and Chris Medland was actually there as the deputy to Lawrence on the F1 team. So that's where I met Meadows. That's where I met Lawrence, and I think that was 6 months there with rugby. And Chris left to go to Crash.net at the time. And so the job came up, and I was just, you know, I hadn't really done motor racing before. I'd done some superbikes, I'd done some MotoGP, and really just I had to sell it on my passion for the sport rather than my experience in it, which was easy because when you've watched something your whole life and you know so much about it, you know, I think that's a key, and I'm sure you guys all know this, you know, yourselves, that a key part of being in this industry is kind of the passion you have for it. That goes a long way. Over, you know, I know some really talented people who maybe aren't as passionate about sport, and you can really tell quickly that they don't have that passion for it. Because if that goes away, it's a long hours. You can work some pretty antisocial times. So I didn't really have I guess it's not really a tried and tested path in. I think it was 3 years freelancing in different sports. I covered Crufts 1 year, which was completely bizarre.
Crufts?
Yeah.
Like that is hang on though, because that is some intense competition.
Yeah. I mean, I've never known anything like it. It was bizarre. So who knows? You know, if I'd gone back a second year, maybe I'd be on a Crofts podcast right now.
I told you guys.
That's a sliding doors moment. That's a sliding doors moment.
The dog cast.
Yeah, the dog. Oh man, you know what, guys? After this call, let's chat.
There's still time. There's still time.
Let's do it.
Listen,
yeah,
I'm fully ready to do a cockapoo episode. There you go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mate, was F1 always the golfy stuff? Because obviously, you know, Crafts, yeah, I mean, sure, why not? But like, of course, like rugby. But did you kind of go into this journalism route thinking might end, not so much an end goal, because I think we always adapt as we go along with our careers, and the industry landscape always changes. Was Formula One always an end goal? Was there other industries that you kind of thought, oh, I could mix with this?
So I think, to be honest with you, when I came out of journalism, when I came out of News Associates, Formula One was something I would have loved to have done, but it seems so unattainable. It was, I was like, there's no way of doing that, because it's got that prestige, hasn't it, of that aura about it. So so for me, and I knew rugby, and you know, a lot of the people that I trained with, you know, the rugby paper was the first publication I worked for, and it was just a very easy in, you know, and I had experience actually playing it and stuff like that, and. Yeah, so for a while, it was always something I was like, I'd love to do that. That would be amazing. But didn't really think about it. And it was something I thought, one day, you know, build up enough of a name and try and get in there. And the ESPN thing kind of, you know, was just an opportunity that came out of nowhere. So I was very lucky that it came about. But as soon as it did, I was like, well, this is it. You've got to grab this and kind of run with it. And so from that point, and that's where I've been since. You know, I haven't kind of moved to other companies or gone into other sports and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of weird how it came about. But how about for you guys? Was there one sport for you all that you had at the start of the career, or have you kind of adapted as you've gone along?
For me, I feel like I would be happy. Like I don't want to bore the audience on what I've done. The boys have heard it enough. I feel like in football, I'd be happy. I'd be happy in the football industry if I never watched football again. I'd feel like I've done that. I think there's always that appeal of. I think for anyone, I feel like for us as creative beings, there's always that never-ending sense of not feeling fully satisfied, and I think that's part of the desire to grow. And I think that's if you don't have that kind of itch, that kind of passion, maybe it's not quite for you. And so for me, I never feel quite satisfied with what I've achieved, no matter how. It's a very good example. It's like we did one project with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Anthony Joshua together pre-lockdown. And, some of the younger boys were buzzed about it. But for myself, I was a bit like, I value more the experience I get to share it with my friends and my brother who are part of my production crew.
Mm.
So I feel going forward, like we've been really lucky with Dre. We've been working within UFC. I'm a massive, anything that involves fighting, whether it's UFC, WWE, boxing, I feel like combat sports to me is probably like the next. The current is F1. Like I love F1 and there's so much, this would be my next 5 to 10 year thing. But I feel like combat sports is also something that grows in respect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's forever how it is. We're all sports lovers. And I think as long as I can get Dre next to a picture of a Premier League title, I feel like that will be mission complete. Being a Liverpool fan, he is.
It's the first time that I haven't had anything to... actually, no. So I have actually.
Nice.
That's all you need. That's all you need in this life.
I think for me, I had a very similar story to you, Nate. My dad used to work nights when I was a kid, and Sundays were our day to like spend together because I never saw him for a week, and that was always Formula One for me. From when I was like a newborn baby until I was about 7 or 8, we used to watch F1 together. And then my dad moved away, but I kind of then started to focus on rugby. So I lost touch with Formula One for a good probably 4 or 5 years. And then I got injured playing rugby and like I was forced to stop playing. And then I kind of, again, lost touch with rugby because I was so mad at the fact that I wasn't allowed to play anymore. But then I kind of started watching Formula One again. And I was like, yeah, I realized why I love this so much. And again, that passion just like reignited. And I think the thing with F1 is that it's always got that ability to change. Yeah, and reignite something. And I think like Matt's got it with football as well, like and Dre's got it with football, like it reignites. But I also then moved on to like baseball and kind of I love baseball. Like I'm such a big baseball. I went to America when I was like 20 and spent 4 months there. And I went over as a big NFL fan. And I still love NFL, don't get me wrong, but I came back loving baseball way more. I was like, why have I never seen this sport?
I went to Chicago with Chris Madland, and the first day we were there, there was 3 of us on a road trip, and we were waiting for the third one. The first day we were there, he was like, "Let's go to Wrigley, let's go watch the Cubs." He found, and we're both jet lagged, and he was like, "Let's go to Wrigley." So yeah, I can relate to that. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's the same story. Like I was in America. My dad lived in America at the time. I was living on like $20 a day. I was so broke. And I was able to go to Target Field and watch the Minnesota Twins. And like, I was able to buy a ticket in the bleachers for like $6. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do every day. Like, it just became this thing I did. It was great. But like, as you said, like, when going to Imola and everything, we've all got different experiences. And I went to Silverstone when I was like 6 and went to qualifying day. And I was like, this is obviously back in the V10 era. And I was like, holy crap. Oh, man.
Yeah.
But like, what is your typical... Now you've transitioned from being a fan and going to Imola, and now you're a journalist. Let's ignore 2020 for a minute. What's your typical race weekend as a journalist? Like going to races, how has it changed from being a fan to now? Like,
yeah, so I think the first thing that's changed is the concept of the weekend for me has changed from being Saturday, Sunday to Thursday through to Sunday. Because the thing for me, I never really, when I was a fan, paid that much attention to the Friday stuff. You know, I'd always, I think on qualifying day in the morning, I'd be like, oh, you know, you read who looks quick and whatever. But, and it's changed now. It's so easy to watch these things and follow them, but we'll arrive it depends if it's a long haul flight. Usually you get there a couple of days early just so that you can kind of sleep off the jet lag. And some of the cities you like to kind of soak up a bit, you know, Budapest, I'd always try and get to a bit early because it's just such a nice city to spend time in. And Thursday is the media day. So, you know, in pre-COVID, you turn up and you have the press conference, you have media sessions, and it's kind of it's a bit hectic for a bit because you're kind of chasing around the paddock and getting these and what we do. There's a group of us. We're like on our own we can't cover 20 drivers media sessions, so we'll kind of split them up and we'll share the audio we get from them. And then Fridays I've always thought are a shame because I think F1 could do so much more with the time it has. And Fridays, it shouldn't have become a televised event. That's just my opinion. But practice is just kind of like, it's been made to be a much bigger deal than it is. It'd be like televising the half an hour of practice before a football game or an NFL game, and then analyzing what happened in it. It's kind of like it doesn't quite for me have that impact. So when I get to Saturdays, that's when for me I'm like, right, this is still the real core of the weekend. But it's long hours in the paddock. You get there early and you leave late. We're very lucky that at the end of a day, when you've been working all day, you can sometimes run the tracks, which is one of the most bizarre experiences ever. You can go and have a run around. I think I've done about 8 of them now, and you really get to appreciate just how crazy these circuits are, like Spa. If you run up Eau Rouge and stuff like that. Beautiful. So yeah, it's mind blowing because when I remember standing at the top of Eau Rouge on a run once and looking back and kind of thinking, about me as a fan going to these races, and Monza as well. The first time I went, actually kind of getting choked up when I saw the podium ceremony from the media center. Mm-hmm. I was kind of a bit like, I was like, wow, I was there as a kid once, and now I'm here, and it was just kind of sometimes that's quite nice. And for people listening, they're like, they might think, oh, it's a bit over the top, but you still feel like you're living that life and experiencing it in some way because it's like this, this kind of big traveling circus. So race days are great because in the media center, sometimes you're watching it from the TV, but you get that pre-race buzz that I mentioned from the grid, and that really I wish everyone could experience that because you kind of you just walk around, you sometimes see the drivers, and sometimes you can see a driver and you're like, you come back to the media center and it's funny, about 4 of you will look at each other and say, Lewis is going to have a bad race today, and it's just something about the way he was walking around, or Charles Leclerc, you'll look and say he's gonna do well today. Just something you see him and you're like, he's relaxed, or you look at someone and they just look tense. So little things like that you get that you wouldn't write an article about as such, but it just adds to your understanding of what happened. And obviously the post race stuff, a lot of the stuff that we get isn't televised, so it helps us write things that are a bit more in depth and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty in depth, and it's why now is so strange because it's so much different to that. We're doing Zoom calls and it's very much 10 minutes done, next driver, 10 minutes done. So it's all very much sitting in one place and it's all coming to us. Rather
personal, do you think?
A little bit. I mean, I think they've done a good job with what they've got, but it does we feel very disconnected from them all, and that's a shame because because a lot of the guys on the like Lando and Daniel Ricciardo being another one, those guys, their personalities really are. When Lewis leaves F1, they're going to need personalities to replace him. And the way to get those guys out front and center is to like elevate their how cool their personality is. So I think over Zoom it's more difficult to do that. But yeah. So I don't know. Hopefully that wasn't too waffly. That gave kind of a nice summation.
I mean, that's on the money because I feel like we've had different guests that work in different corners of this industry and people with different ranges of experience and different timelines in their career, and I can definitely relate to. One, I think the last track I was at was Spa, and it's funny because as you all know, Nate, for those that haven't been to Formula One races, I guess in a way it's almost like at football stadiums. You get such a different experience as to how the surroundings are, the feel, the vibe, just the spirit of the place. Definitely places like Spa, like and amongst the greenery of it all, and you have different viewing positions. We see different parts of the track, and you just go, "Wow, this is magic." For yourself, this is a double-headed question. What is your favorite track to work at? But then, is there a different track that you like just for watching the race?
That's a really good question, because the best one to watch the race from is Austria, because the media center. You can pretty much see about 80% of the circuit. The only bit you can't see is where Lewis and Albon clash. So is that turn 5, 6? Because it goes just under like kind of a crest, and then they come back round, and then you can't quite see the final sequence of corners. The rest of it you can see. So when Rosberg and Hamilton hit at the top of turn 3 in 2016, I was watching out of the window, and you could see it, and that's slightly ahead of the TV feed. So you kind of you see it and then you look up and you see it happen again. So you kind of get it twice. So that's the second part of your question. The first one is a really good one. I mean, I like a place like Monza it's funny because Monza is such a pain to get into. You know, it's just like I don't know, everything about it. It's exactly the same as I remember as a fan. You get there and there's loads of people and you don't know where you're going. It's kind of it's just chaos. But when you're there and you're in the place, there's just something about it. You know, there's a feeling about it that is pretty special. I'm going to say two, and one's not an F1 track. But the first, I mean, I got to do Monaco for the first time last year, and that's just insane. I don't know how that place is still hosting an F1 race. I'm glad it is, but it's bizarre. You know, you're there looking around like is this really
insane.
an F1 circuit?
Well, you exactly in a video you did, you know, you were showing how close, you know, you could be from boat to track. It's insane.
Yeah, and that was because you see that on TV and you just assume that there must be more space there than you imagine. And when you're standing between them, you can put your arms out and you're like, well, I'm basically touching like the end of the harbour and the gate, the wall of the track.
It was Ascari. You're talking about Monza. Obviously, the Ascari chicane is named after Alberto Ascari, but he famously crashed into the sea in Monaco.
Yeah,
he drove
into the harbour. Yeah,
went into the sea.
Yeah.
Luckily, they didn't have seatbelts back then, so they were able to just swim out. Like,
yeah, the one time it was beneficial not having a seatbelt was then. Yeah, and just from a pure fan perspective, when Alonso did the Indy 500 in 2017, I went to that, and that was just mind blowing from a fan perspective. I mean, 250,000 people there on a race day, and the noise of that place was incredible. And I think any circuit where you can hear the noise wherever you are is pretty special. So
it's magic.
A quick one, I'll bring it back to F1. Hockenheim, I know, you know, not everyone's favorite circuit, but we were sat in this kind of dingy little tent kind of thing, and it was boiling hot, and the air conditioning wasn't working both years. So I remember sitting there and we were all having a miserable time. But in the race, when Vettel crashed in 2018, again, the feed we were watching is just behind what's happening in real life, and you could hear this like explosion of noise from the paddock, because half of it was Ferrari fans kind of groaning, and then there's obviously a lot of Mercedes and Lewis fans there just going wild. And you hear that stuff, and it just, it makes it quite special to cover. And yeah, so there's some places that have that atmosphere and some that don't. So I think they're the special ones. I love Austin, although the media center is basically just a giant conference room, which is a shame.
Classic America, no frills.
Yeah. I'm trying to think off the top of my head now, but yeah, there's a handful of them that you pay money to go to, you know, straight away. You wouldn't think twice about it. Yeah, I'm sure there's one I'm not doing any justice to.
Solid.
Making you keeping them all sweet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like rattling through them one at a time, like quickly.
There's always different experiences, isn't there? I guess like for me, like I really love the magic of the Canadian Grand Prix. I love the Canadian Grand Prix, but this is what's so hilarious. So we, you know, like you said, on the first day you come down to do the media. So we were doing media with Motorsport, with Shell, obviously with the Ferrari lads and Alpha, but mostly with Ferrari. So we had a lot of time with Seb and Charles across the Thursday and the Friday. And this is a great story. I think I shared this with you lads before, but so Canada being Canada, sometimes it's tricky to find these kind of areas if you've been there for the first time where you need to go. Same with Silverstone, so you turn up, you get your passes. Once you've done that routine, you know how to do it. It's kind of like first day at school kind of vibe. And I remember we were trying to find like the kind of the fan zone for the Canadian Grand Prix. We're turning up in an Uber because obviously in Montreal, you kind of cross over the bridge, come into Jurassic Park. And we somehow, Lord knows how, what happened, we were trying to find a way in. Everyone's kind of working, setting up the track still. We managed to get our actual Uber, an actual Uber onto the racetrack by accident, because we were like, we followed down like a little service road, thought, go around this fence, let's see if we can cut through. And then we're on the track. We're actually like, unbelievable. The Uber drivers couldn't believe his luck. I was like, mate, you've got 5 stars straight away. That is, like Canada's a beautiful race, but also I got to say, Spa I really enjoy because sometimes myself, I might not be at the media centers, so to say. So I have to find nice points to watch the track from and get social content. So I mean, even like turn 1, I kind of pitch myself off the corner of the pit exit there at Spa. And then, if you want to look down the pit lane, and you can just walk across that little corner and look further down. So each track has got their characters. It's a unique experience for those that haven't had it.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the key, is that each one has something that you love and hate about each one, I think. And some it's just that the love is high, there's more likes than dislikes. I don't want to, I'm not going to crap on Sochi again. I feel like that would be unfair because I've done that once. But there's some
guys.
Yeah. Sorry, it's Nate Saunders. It's not these guys. But some places, just through no fault of their own, just, they don't have either the history or some of the, the aura about the place that others do. And Silverstone's a weird one for me, because Silverstone, you go in, and Silverstone's such a cool place to race, and it's the first place I went to a MotoGP event there in 2013, and as an accredited journalist. And in the media center, you feel like you're literally you feel like you're just kind of in this like box away from everyone. You can barely see the race. You're watching it on TV, and you can just about hear the noise. And so stuff like that, sometimes when you get back out of the media center, you're like, oh yeah, I'm at Silverstone, and you kind of snap back into the feeling of being there again. So that's quite a funny experience sometimes, where you forget you're actually there in some of the places.
What would you say is your favorite interview that you've done, or like piece of F1 content? What's the best thing that you can remember? So you got a lot of memories, but I'm quite jealous. But yeah, if you pick a couple.
Well, there was one that I was really proud of how it turned out. Was end of 2018. It was the 10-year anniversary of Brazil 2008, and that year I basically put together what we called the oral history of Brazil 2008. So it was talking to everyone involved in that race. I managed to get Timo Glock on that and talk about the end of that race. And he said, because obviously there's the huge conspiracy theory about Glock and everything. And he was like, look, when I started the penultimate lap, I said, I need to pit for dry tires. They said, you can't pit because they've just closed the pit lane because there's too many people in the pits. So he was like, okay. So I never knew that before. And when you hear that, you're like, well, that kind of just debunks any lingering conspiracy that he slowed down for Lewis and stuff. And I managed to, so it got Glock. We managed to I got 2 questions into Lewis on it. I spoke to Felipe Massa, his brother. I spoke to Rob Smedley, Paddy Lowe. And it was all of them reminiscing about something so long ago. And such a and I'm sure for you guys as well, an event it's just so raw when you think about it. And it still is just amazing that even happened like that, and putting it all together was really cool. I spoke to Brundle as well about his famous commentary. So it was just this piece I was doing, and I was like, this is insane, because I remember watching that event with my friends at uni. There's a funny story about that, actually. I was playing a 5-a-side tournament my first year of university. I was about a month in my freshers year, and I said to the guys, like, look, if we get to the final, I'm gonna have to run back, because it's Brazil's going to be on. And they were like, you won't though, because we'll be playing. I was like, no, seriously, I'm not playing football because Lewis could win the title. And we got to the final of this tournament, and they're like, right, we're ready. I was like, no guys, I'm jogging back to halls now, because and they were like, you can't. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not missing this. So I remember running back, and I was actually a bit late for the start of the race. So I just watched it in like my football gear, because I was like, if I go for a shower, I'm going to miss something dramatic happen. So that's how I watched that race. And then I was like 10 years on, I'm kind of talking to all the people in it. So that was a cool bit of content. And the final piece, it was a huge piece to read and to get done, but it was kind of all of their experiences explaining how it all unfolded. So that was pretty awesome. And one of those things that when you look back on in a few years' time, and I still do now, I look at it and it's one of the best, one of the coolest pieces I was able to work on over time. But it took a long time. It took about 8 months of calling people and badgering people and stuff like that.
I'm going to say that I relate to that sacrifice, because I was also in university at the time of Lewis winning that championship. So I remember that memory very fondly. It's something we talked about with James Allen, because of course James was commentating on that as well with good old Brundle, the chaos and hysteria. And I'm just saying, when I feel like something good or special is going to happen, everything drops as a sport fan. And I remember when England in the last World Cup, I was so confident after we got through Colombia, we did penalties. I was like, we've done it. We've beat penalties. We're going to win it. I was convinced. And I got asked to go out to cover the Formula E in New York. And I kind of looked at him and went, this clashes with the World Cup final. And this is before we played Croatia. I was so convinced that we're going to meet France and we will beat France, because we'll get in Pogba's head and we're going to cause him all kinds of problems. That was what I did. So I did your thing, the 5-a-side thing. I thought, there's no way in the world that I'm gonna miss England winning a World Cup, and I'm in America for it. That can't even have the respect to call it football Come on.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
having that. Not
Yeah.
having that. So I relate to that.
Yeah, there's one I've remembered as well. Just then, last year, so McLaren, a lot of the teams will do hot laps of the track in supercars, and I got one with Lando Norris. So they film you in the car with the driver as they take you around. So that was at Austin, and I was just basically firing quick fire questions at him. Jason Bourne or James Bond, who do you prefer? And Lando was just casually driving this car around at ridiculous speeds. I'm there sweating like crazy. I'm holding onto my notepad so much that when I came back, it had bent in two. And the final interview we got out of it was really nice because we get all the footage outside the car as well. So that's another one that I remember. But yeah, you're right. It's one of those times when you're with sport. It's the only thing where you move life events around to just cater for it.
Dre did a hot laps and absolutely screamed.
I knew you was going to bring that.
Dre, who was yours with, Dre?
No, I can't remember now. It's literally one of the scariest ones. Please, guys, you can actually have a look on our socials and you can see that embarrassing moment of my life.
The reason I find it funny is because I saw Dre scream and I was like, that's hilarious. I'm never going to scream like that. I'll just love it. And I'm now a little bit scared that I will crap myself.
You will. You will. Because you know what? I just lastly, I would say just on that, and it leads into some of the things you do when you meet some of these drivers, and it's only when you actually go in the car. I got to go in the McLaren, and they're driving that thing. Obviously, normally, to a regular person like me, you just see these cars on the street, so you actually don't really see it really going. You don't see the tail with, the tail moving or anything like that, because no one's ever going that fast, But when you're hitting corners at minimum 90 miles per hour, and the G-force is just moving you down, you're literally sloping down, and you're praying for your life, and you're air braking like crazy. Is that you actually it hit me when we was doing this hot lap, just when we was passing the one of the key corners. I'm rubbish at this stuff, so I won't be able to say what corner it actually was. I know the sponsor, but I won't mention because they're not paying us. But when we passed that famous drinks brand that's under that bridge, literally, I just thought, my God, we're not even going nowhere near the speeds that they go. And so when I actually get to meet some of the drivers, and we got to obviously meet Lando, Carlos, Sainz, the kids are telling me off for doing that, and a couple of the others, and Pierre Gasly. I'll just think to myself, it's a privilege to be able to meet people that actually really risking their lives for entertainment, and I never understand why some journalists just want to get at them and, oh, Pierre, you've been moved down, so what's that like? It's you're still an amazing athlete, still a courageous person, still one of the most amazing things you can actually do. And maybe some of these guys haven't actually done it before, gone in even in a hot lap, so they wouldn't know what it's like. But I was scared to death, and I can't even think what they're driving 200 miles an hour or in the rain and things like that. These things are to be saluted, I feel.
Just a quick one on that. And so the first time I did a hot lap was with Rudy Van Buren, who was McLaren's eSport driver, who became their simulator driver. And I went around Hockenheim with him. I got in the car and I was like, okay, this guy's an esports driver. And I kind of got in and before I said, oh, so have you done a few laps? He's like, no, it's my first lap of the day. Oh, have you driven Hockenheim before? No, haven't done it. And the thought I had in my whole time was, I was like, this guy's used to, not damage not being a thing. He's used to respawning, on the track, if there's a crash. So I was sat there and I was just like, and the video back, I still have it. I'm not screaming. I'm just like this,
frozen.
I was like, this guy's not an F1 driver, but he was fantastic. And, Rudy, there's actually the red flag gif that Chris Medland always posts during a red flag is from that hot lap. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Dre. The speeds they go at, it makes you realize just how good they all are.
So final question.
Yeah.
Silverstone this weekend. We're all really excited. It's a double header. Any bold predictions? Who's going to be on pole? Who's going to win? Who's going to be worse?
I was really boring on the Espn F1 podcast this week because I was like, I don't really have. I kept it really, really straight. So for this one, I'm determined to do something that is a bit out there because I was like, I can't do two in a week where I haven't said anything. I'm going to predict Albon on the podium. I think even though there's no fans there, I think for he's British born, and just getting that podium, I think for him would be really important as well, because he should have had it in Austria, and the longer that goes on without it, it becomes a big issue. And yeah, I maybe I think a bold prediction is Lewis not winning. That these days is a bold prediction. So maybe maybe something happens with him at the beginning, because I think the season needs that as well, doesn't it? It needs some jeopardy for Lewis to kind of keep us interested in what's happening at the front.
I love that that's a bold prediction these days. Crazy.
Yeah,
I'm still gunning for Bottas world champ. I'm still gunning for Bottas world champion. Let's have it.
Yeah, this is the sort of race where if Lewis has an issue, he needs to go out and win it. So, yeah, I'm still not convinced myself, but I'm happy to be proven wrong on that front.
I'm still sulking because I'm not getting my Hamilton Vettel lineup. I'm still hanging in there. Maybe it might happen. I've been predicting this for all along, and 1 minute it looked like it was going to happen, and now it's not. So, unfortunately, but yeah. Nate, we appreciate. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Racing Point could be a bold prediction as well. Like, them on the podium.
Mercedes.
Well. Yeah,
I think. Do you reckon there's going to be an announcement on Vettel moving to Aston Martin this weekend or next weekend?
Yeah, I think that's the really interesting talking point. Is we've had a week now without a race, so they should have had time to kind of talk about these things behind closed doors. So, it'd be amazing if I'm still not convinced that will happen. I just can't see them doing that to Perez. But at the same time, yeah, like Vettel, Aston Martin is such a cool link up that you'd never have dreamed of in a million years. Yeah. So I can totally see why they'd want it. So yeah, there you go. There's another bold prediction. Vettel gets signed this weekend for Aston Martin. So I've got four.
We all know.
I got four.
We all know who should be leaving, vacating the seat, but that's not going to happen. But I'll deny this if we ever see them, and I'll be like, I've always been a fan of yours.
Yeah, just run away. Just run away.
Just lose. So if you see me doing that, just lose all forms of authenticity, then.
Well, I have a funny Stroll story for another time, which is a bit longer. I don't want to take too much time up, but that gives me a reason to come back one time and tell you guys.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was just saying, look, it's been great to have you. Honestly, I've been badgering Nate for a long time to be able to come on the show, and I really do appreciate your time, buddy.
Mate, no, it was absolutely great coming on. I really love what you guys are doing, and it was great to have a chat.
Thanks.
And then we're expecting an invite on ESPN at some point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if we can fit. I don't know if we can fit all three of you in at one point, but maybe we'll find a way.
We'll flip a coin. Yeah. You pick a number between 1 to 10, and we'll just pick the nearest number to what you have.
Cool. We'll do a battle royal.
Right, it's fine. I'll go. It's okay. I'll go.
Well, it can't be me because I'm the white supremacist, so I can't be.
Yeah, you're not allowed on.
That's true.
You're not allowed on anyway. So yeah, definitely.
Dre,
and Sam put down that knife.
Yeah, fight to the death for the song.
Exactly.
And
then... No, thank you very much, honestly, and thank you for the listeners and viewers who've been watching our shows. Really appreciate it. Obviously, take a look at us on Verge Magazine online, and also check us out on Alternative Sport, the home of all of our sports content. We're doing really well with that. Nate, tell us where people can find you and your podcast.
Yeah, so espn.com/F1 is where we cover everything for people listening in the States. We obviously have TV rights, and the Espn F1 podcast is, I think, I always like forget how many of the podcast platforms it's on. Basically, all good podcast platforms is what I say: Spotify, Stitcher, etc. But yeah, we'd love you to come and listen, have a listen. And it's not always my voice on there that you have to put up with. I'm sometimes not on the show, so that might be a bonus. I don't know.
Well, I'm a big fan of Alexis. She's I've always been a big fan of her, except for supporting Man United.
No one's perfect, Dre. And I tell her that all the time. Like, of all the teams to pick, United,
no, we actually met her at the NFL event, and I literally just fanned out. I was like, oh my god, and I ran over to her because obviously she's usually in the States. So no, definitely, I'm looking forward to coming to see you at your gaff, masked up, of course.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I'll start badgering you now. It'll go the other way. I'll be like, dude, when can you come on? When can you come on? And I'll keep just doing that back and forth.
In my dreams, no, thanks again. And guys, keep on watching and keep on listening. Links are all down below. And we will see you next week. Peace.